The sun over the Praça do Comércio felt like a soft blanket, a sharp contrast to the ice-cold wine in my glass. Then my phone broke the calm. It was Amber. She wasn't simply crying. She was screaming. "They're calling the police!" she yelled. "There are strangers in my condo!" I didn't need to ask what happened. She had used the emergency key, the one meant only for fires or floods, to move herself and her boyfriend into a property I sold 2 weeks earlier. I didn't gasp. I didn't say sorry. I just took a slow sip of my Vinho Verde. Before I explain how my family tried to take control of my life from across the ocean, leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I'd like to know who's part of this community. To understand why I didn't shout, why my pulse stayed steady, you need to understand where I came from. You need to understand the structure of guilt I lived inside for 32 years in Seattle. The rain there didn't just clean the streets. It felt like it soaked into the walls of my life, making everything heavy, damp, and hard to move. My parents, Jeffrey and Holly, didn't build a home on love. They built one on usefulness. In their design, I wasn't a daughter. I was a load-bearing wall. My role was to stay quiet and strong, holding up the roof so my sister Amber could dance freely without getting wet. They called it family responsibility. I called it a long-running scheme. The evidence wasn't subtle. It sat in the driveway. On Amber's 16th birthday, she received a brand-new crossover SUV. It cost $36,000. I remember the amount because I saw the paperwork on the kitchen counter while making my own lunch. When I turned 16, Jeffrey handed me a bus schedule and a lecture about the environmental cost of unnecessary driving. He called it character building. It didn't stop with cars. The imbalance was a clear line item in a budget they assumed I wouldn't analyze. For Amber, they paid for private tutors, expensive SAT prep courses, and eventually tuition at a private liberal arts college, totaling $215,000 over 4 years. They covered every dollar. They said they were investing in her future. For me, they said they were investing in my toughness. I worked 3 jobs while earning my degree. I scanned groceries until 2 a.m., slept 4 hours, and then went to class. When I graduated with honors and no help from them, they didn't praise my effort. They praised the fact that I was low maintenance. That was their favorite description of me. "Lauren is so low maintenance. Lauren doesn't need us." They were right. I didn't need them, but they relied completely on me. Over time, I became a UX researcher, a role focused on studying behavior and improving systems. Naturally, I applied that same perspective to my family. I realized I wasn't a person to Jeffrey and Holly. I was a diversified asset. I was the safety net meant to catch Amber whenever she fell. That brings us to the condo, my condo. I bought it 2 years ago in a modern downtown building. It had floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the Sound that cost me every bonus and stock option I earned over a decade of non-stop work. I bought it as a refuge. But the moment my parents walked in for the housewarming, I saw it in their eyes. They weren't seeing my home. They were seeing a family resource. Holly ran her hand over the quartz counters and said, "This is a lot of space for one person, Lauren. Almost wasteful, don't you think?" Jeffrey stepped onto the balcony, looked at the view, and nodded. "This is a solid investment. It's good to know we have this in the family." They didn't see my name on the deed. They saw a spare room for Amber when she got tired of roommates. They saw a backup plan if Jeffrey's business had a bad quarter. They saw something they could use whenever the golden child needed more. So when the job offer from Lisbon arrived, I knew exactly how this would play out. If I left the condo empty, even briefly, they would move into it emotionally and practically. They would pressure me to let Amber house sit, and within days she would be rearranging everything.
That's when I realized the guilt I carried, the crushing sense that I owed them what I earned, wasn't natural. It was a cage they built around me, brick by expensive brick. And I understood there was only one way out of a cage that strong. You don't unlock it, you tear the whole thing down. The Lisbon offer wasn't just a job, it was an exit. Still, when I read the email, my first reaction wasn't joy, it was fear. Who would pay Amber's rent if I left? Who would handle my parents' constant tech support calls? Who would fix everything? That fear was the signal I needed. Sitting in my ergonomic chair, staring at Seattle's gray skyline, I ran the scenario. My reliability hadn't saved my family, it had weakened them. By solving every problem, paying every bill, and being the dependable one, I had created a vacuum of responsibility. I made it easy for them to remain helpless. Amber wasn't only entitled, she was underdeveloped. My parents weren't just taking advantage, they were enablers who had shifted their parental role onto their oldest child. If I announced I was moving, the guilt campaign would start immediately. They would ask me to keep the condo just in case. They would say, only until Amber gets back on her feet. And I knew myself. If they pushed hard enough, that old structure of guilt would activate and I would give in. My sanctuary would become a crash pad. I'd be paying HOA fees from Portugal, while Amber hosted parties I wasn't invited to. So I made a decision. I chose silence. A discreet real estate agent listed the condo off-market. I packed my life into boxes late at night, disguised as simple decluttering. And when they asked, over Sunday dinner, what my plans were for the condo while I was overseas, the lie came easily. I told them I had hired a property management company. They would rent the unit to corporate tenants. Everything was handled. A strict lease, no family access. My mother frowned, her fork stopping halfway to her mouth. A management company? That feels so impersonal, Lauren. Strangers living in your home. It covers the mortgage, I replied, keeping my tone even. 2 weeks before my flight, I sat across from the Coopers at a long mahogany table. They were a young couple, both architects, visibly excited. They talked about painting a nursery and hosting dinner gatherings. They saw a future in that space. I signed the documents, handed over the keys, and felt a real weight lift from my chest. It wasn't only a sale, it was a clean break. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Amber. I boarded a plane to Lisbon with 2 suitcases and a one-way ticket, leaving behind a place that was no longer mine. I believed I had planned carefully. I thought I had finally stepped out of the vacuum. I underestimated how determined they were to pull me back in. I was sitting in Praça Dom Luís, looking at my phone. Amber's screaming had stopped, replaced by the reality of what had happened. My parents had driven her to the condo, they had unlocked the door, they had helped her carry boxes into a home that belonged to someone else. They ignored my property management explanation, not because they knew it was false, but because they didn't care whether it was true. In their view, my property was family property. My limits were optional. I called Ryan Cooper. My hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from restrained anger. He answered immediately. "Mr. Cooper," I said calmly, "this is Lauren." "I'm so sorry, Miss Wallace," his voice tense. "Your sister is yelling at my wife, saying this is her house. The police will be here in 5 minutes." "Let them come. Put me on speaker." I heard the phone shift, then Amber's voice, sharp and panicked. "You can't kick me out. My parents said I could stay here. Lauren said it was fine." "I never said that, Amber," I replied, my voice carrying across a living room thousands of miles away. The silence was complete. "Lauren," she said quietly, "Lauren, tell them. Mom and Dad said." "Mom and Dad don't own that condo, Amber. I did, and I sold it. You are trespassing." I heard a gasp, then distant sirens. "Mr. Cooper," I continued, "the officer will need a statement. Please tell them the sale is confirmed and that no one in my family has permission to be on the property. If she refuses to leave, you have my full support to press charges." "Lauren," Amber screamed, "you can't do this. Mom and Dad are going to destroy you." "They can try," I said. "Put the officer on the line when they arrive." For the next 20 minutes, I coordinated my sister's removal from another continent. I listened as the officer arrived, reviewed the deed I had emailed, and explained Amber's options. She could leave willingly or be escorted out.
I heard the defeat in her voice when she chose to leave on her own. When the call ended, I didn't cry. My emotions were sealed off. I ordered another glass of wine. The sun was setting over the Tagus River, turning the water a bright gold. My chest felt light. It was the feeling of a bridge permanently burned. But it wasn't over. My phone lit up again. Incoming video call, Dad. I leaned back in my cafe chair, the last of the wine warming in the late afternoon sun, and accepted the call. Jeffrey and Holly appeared on the screen, sitting tightly together on their beige couch. Amber was wedged between them, face red, clutching a tissue. They looked unified and outraged. "Jeffrey," snapped, his face filling the screen, "we demand an explanation now." "I think you're mistaken," I said evenly. "I wasn't the one who broke into someone else's home."
"Don't play games," Holly yelled. "You set us up. You let us believe that condo was available. You humiliated your sister. Do you know she had to leave in a police car? Do you understand how traumatic that was for her?" "Traumatic?" I repeated. "Traumatic is finding strangers in your living room. Traumatic is being arrested for trespassing. Amber is fortunate the Coopers chose not to press charges. That was my intervention." "You should have told us," Amber cried. "You knew I needed somewhere to stay. You did this to hurt me." "I sold my property because I'm moving to another continent," I said. "This wasn't about you, Amber. Not everything is." "We are family," Jeffrey shouted. "Family supports family. That condo was a shared resource. You had a responsibility to let us use it until you were settled. How could you be so cold, so calculated?" I studied them carefully. They weren't hurt. They were angry that access had been cut off. They were upset that the support system they relied on was gone. "Let me be absolutely clear," I said, shifting into the calm, structured tone that had carried me through years of professional conflict. "I did not owe you that property, and I did not owe you advance notice."
And I certainly don't owe you an apology. What I am going to do is send you an invoice. "An invoice?" Holly gasped. "For what?" "For the emergency locksmith the Coopers had to call after Amber jammed the lock," I said. "For the professional cleaning service they needed after Murd was tracked through their entryway. And for the 3 nights at the hotel I just booked for Amber, which will be the final financial support you ever receive from me." "You wouldn't dare," Jeffrey growled. "Check your email," I replied. "I just sent it. You can pay it, or you can explain to the Coopers why you won't. Goodbye." I ended the call before they could answer. My hands were shaking, not with fear, but with adrenaline. I had just dismissed my parents from my life. I ordered another glass of wine as the sun dropped lower, stretching long shadows across the cobblestones. I believed the worst was behind me. I thought it was over. Then my email alerted me again. This time it wasn't from my parents. It was a message from my former boss in Seattle, marked urgent. I opened it, and the color drained from my face. "Lauren," it read, "we need to talk. The new owners of your condo, Ryan Cooper, is the CFO of Pinnacle Group, our largest client and your father's biggest account." My stomach sank. This was no longer just a family conflict. It had turned into a professional crisis. The Coopers weren't strangers. They were the people signing my father's checks, and his daughter had just trespassed in their home. The situation had escalated completely. Ryan Cooper wasn't simply a client. He was the CFO of Pinnacle Group, a conglomerate responsible for 40% of my father's consulting firm's revenue. Jeffrey had spent 15 years building that relationship. He played golf with Ryan. He sent him premium scotch every holiday season, and now his daughter had broken into Ryan's home.
The police report was already filed. What could have been dismissed as gossip had moved through professional channels. In Seattle's close-knit business world, reputation was everything, and my family had just lost theirs. My phone rang. It was Jeffrey. I stared at the screen as the power dynamic shifted so abruptly it felt disorienting. For decades, I had been the one seeking approval. Now I held the one thing that might save him. I answered. "Lauren," he said. His voice was unsteady, stripped of authority and filled with panic. "You have to help me. Ryan Cooper called. He's canceling the account. He says he can't trust someone whose family ignores boundaries and property law." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said evenly. "You have to fix this," he begged. "Write him a letter. Say it was a misunderstanding. Say you gave Amber permission and forgot to tell him. Say anything. Take the blame, Lauren, please. If I lose this account, the firm collapses. We lose everything." I stayed silent, listening to his breathing. He was asking me to lie. He wanted me to damage my own credibility, to portray myself as careless and unreliable so he could avoid responsibility. He was asking me to sacrifice myself for his benefit. For a moment, the old conditioning wavered. The instinct to rescue them was deeply rooted. "It's just a letter," a familiar thought whispered. "It would save them." Then I looked out at the Lisbon skyline. I thought about the vacuum of competence. If I fixed this, nothing would change. They would simply wait for the next crisis and expect me to intervene again. "Dad," I said quietly, "do you remember when I was 12 and asked for money for the science fair? You told me failure was the best teacher." "Lauren, please," he said. "This is exactly the time," I replied. "I won't lie for you. I won't take responsibility for Amber's actions or your choices. This is what happens when people are treated like assets instead of individuals. Eventually, they leave." "You're being selfish," he snapped, anger breaking through the fear. "Yes," I said, and the word felt right. "I am. I'm protecting myself, and for the first time, I'm genuinely happy." I ended the call and blocked his number. I blocked Holly. I blocked Amber. I sat as the sun disappeared, leaving the city in twilight. I had severed ties with my entire family, and I felt more alive than ever. The loss forced downsizing, exactly as I expected, and with resources gone, Amber's financial support ended. They could no longer pay her rent or maintain her lifestyle. Last week, I saw a post from a cousin. Amber has a job now, working as a receptionist at a dental office in Bellevue. It isn't glamorous. It isn't the six-figure salary she believed she deserved, but it's hers. The vacuum of competence worked. By stepping away, by refusing to be the solution, I forced them to adapt. It wasn't cruelty, it was necessary. They are struggling, likely resentful, but they are functioning without depending on me. I sit now at a small iron table in the Alfama district. The air smells of salt and grilled sardines. A waiter places a pastel de nata and a bica in front of me. I take a bite, the custard warm and sweet, pastry flakes clinging to my lips. I am alone. I have no emergency contacts saved, no family events on my calendar, no calls asking me to fix devices or cover expenses. For years, I believed this kind of solitude meant failure. Instead, I watch a yellow tram rattle down the steep street against a blue sky and understand what it truly is. It's freedom. It's the first full breath after leaving a space that was slowly suffocating you. I didn't just survive my family, I outgrew them. I built a life that fits me, not one designed to store their expectations. I take a sip of coffee, bitter and perfect. I am selfish. I am independent. I am free. If you've ever had to burn a bridge so you wouldn't walk back across it, tap the like button. Share this with the dependable person in your life who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more stories about reclaiming your freedom. Thanks for listening.